House in Baltimore and for the Wizards. Certainly all of our lonely eyes will now focus on the Orioles as there will be no more local basketball or hockey. This guy has been covering basketball for a long, long time, familiar with his work from CBSSports.com a number of years ago as their NBA national columnist. He's now with Vegas Insider. You can follow his journey out on Twitter as well at Tony Mejia NBA. That's MEJIA NBA out on Twitter as well as at VegasInsider.com. What's going on, Tony? How you been, man?
I'm doing great, Nestor. How about you?
Well, it's been a weird week here, I think, for anyone who's, a Ted Leon's follower or Monumental Sports. And I guess for a lot of other people, we always like to poop on Philly here and say, well, they weren't even in the playoffs this year. It makes it a lot tougher when you get close, you get into these Game 7s. Certainly for the Wizards, there was a real opportunity there. And the home court mattered a lot. I don't know if it's going to matter a lot in the next round. Feels like LeBron was like sort of filing his nails and sitting around the last week waiting for this, but very, very disappointing for the Wizards to not win Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, very disappointing for them to not win Game 1 or 2 either. I mean, to me, that's where the opportunity was truly lost, and obviously in Game 7, John Wall didn't have his best game, couldn't get to the free throw line. I thought that was alarming. And the lack of a bench really came back to bite them at the end.
Well, the lack of the bench, we talked so much about that back in November, December. They started to play better. They made some moves, Jennings, Bogdanovich, amongst others, thinking that they had done something. But I guess, once you get down to the nitty-gritty, it's not what can you do on a night in March. It's what did you do on a night in May, right?
Absolutely. And, I like the Bogdanovich signing, and certainly paid off at times down the stretch on the regular season and earlier in the playoffs, but they couldn't get the instant offense they envisioned getting from him. Jason Smith didn't play much in a Game 7. I thought Scott Brooks went with the guys that he trusted, and ultimately they ran out of gas late. You can't really see the Kelly Olynyk bomb going off the way it did, and that's why they're home.
They were beaten by a man with a man bun, huh? I mean, and he looked otherworldly. I mean, it looked like Larry Bird was out there floating around in the fourth.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the one difference that you get in NBA home games is the role players feel more comfortable in familiar surroundings, and that's usually the difference when you take the starters out of it. Who steps up as that X factor? And Olynyk loves playing at home.
Yeah, you've been covering this a long time. Boy, Isaiah Thomas has turned into a hell of a player, right? I mean, I guess if we're measuring in heart, every time I see him, dribbling, it gives me thoughts of Muggsy Bogues and other very small guys. Even in 2017, a guy of that size can play with that sort of magnitude in big moments. I mean, or you talk about earlier in the series. I mean, he was the difference maker in the first part of the series.
Oh, I mean, he's a legitimate star. There really isn't any smoke and mirrors about what he does, other than he does things that you shouldn't be able to do at about 5'8". But I mean, he won the Pac-12 tournament almost by himself back when he was at Washington. Memorable shot there, and obviously he has beaten the odds. As the last pick in the draft, and consistently having to prove himself and not getting off the bench. Many times early on in his career, just kept working at it and physically got his body to where his weaknesses became strengths, in terms of his being elusive and faster than everybody.
Tony, I'm more of a hockey fan than a basketball fan these days, and I keep up with both, but I was traveling around with the Caps, and it's fascinating. They both the brackets sort of come out in the same week, a week apart, and every hockey fan does fill out brackets, and you sort of take your chances and stuff. In the NBA, you just fill the chalk out, and here we are 3 weeks later, and it sort of worked out that way. The Wizards maybe came close to sort of breaking and being a bracket-busting team, but in the NBA, we always see the best in the end is still here, and everything we talked about last summer and before the season began about Golden State and Cleveland. Here we are again. I don't think there's any reason to think this won't be Golden State and Cleveland at some point in the next 7 to 10 days.
No, I've been on the Golden State Cleveland bandwagon since training camp. That was my preseason pick. But there has been times where it looked a little fuzzy. You had the Cavs completely disappear for a couple of months defensively. We're allowing Boston to pass them and allowing for people to envision the possibility of a Washington rising up because their first five were playing so well at that point. Golden State had the Kevin Durant injury that opened imaginations in Houston and San Antonio that maybe they could get in. and here we are, like you said, looking to be on the cusp of what we all envisioned.
Well, then to pile on this whole thing on the Golden State side, the loss of Leonard and Popovich kind of going a little cranky this week, right, Coach Pop? Not like his normal cranky, like even more cranky, probably made by the presidency, right?
Well, absolutely. But you know what? To me, I thought he handled it really well in that he gets to the podium after an emotional loss, really doesn't say much, and wasn't asked anything either. But then, yes, you get the explosion yesterday on Monday or Tuesday, wherever it was. Yes, this was a dirty play, and anybody can look at it and break it down can see that Pachulia took a couple of baby steps to make sure he got in underneath it. I've been watching closeouts, like 2 decades, and that is not a real closeout. That's not the way that you're taught to do it. I mean, it was dirty.
Well, then the other side is when the other guy gets injured. I mean, I'm fresh off the Pittsburgh Capitals thing where, Niskanen took a jab at Crosby. Crosby couldn't play. It becomes a very difficult thing, I think, to adjudicate for the leagues in this sort of 24-hour news cycle as to say, well, who shouldn't play in Game 2? If you hurt someone else, are you out? And I guess that's an age-old question going back to Bill Lambier, right?
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, the Spurs dealt with this with Bruce Bowen on their team, and that's what a lot of Golden State and NBA fans are going back at them with. You had one of the dirtiest players in the league be a driving force in some of those championships, and now you're trying to say that that shouldn't be allowed, and that's a valid point. But yeah, absolutely, it's been going on for decades. It'll continue to go on, and you just have to call them like you see them. And, normally you would say, well, that was in the heat of the game. Dr. Pachulia certainly didn't think it was dirty, but I could tell that was, maybe not his intent to injure him the way he did, but he certainly closed out the way you're not supposed to.
Tony Mia joining us here from VegasInsider.com. He covers the NBA. You can follow him at Tony Mia NBA as these series get heated up here this week, and we get ready for a conference finals, and then, of course, the real finals. Boston and Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland closed this out in 3 or 3.5 games. I mean, I don't think anybody's given Boston a whole lot of respect here as a 1 seed. We talk about home court. This will be their opportunity this week to say, well, you guys should have had home court, but can they hold it in games 1 and 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland gets at least a split of 1 and 2. I think that the wear and tear is a factor simply because Boston had to go the distance while the Cavs got to kind of bide their time and get better and get healthier. They didn't have Kyle Korver. He was hurt for most of March. They didn't have a lot of time to be cohesive. So I think that, we're going to see a monster in this series. But the home court and the fact that they shoot the three-pointer so well should get them a couple of games. I like the Cavs in 6.
What do you like about the Cavs right now to repeat this thing? As you pointed out, they did take some time off, famously and infamously, right? And, having players resting, which was all the rage back in February and March for a lot of these cities where, a father wants to take his son to see LeBron play and spends $150 and LeBron doesn't show up. Or same thing for Golden State. I mean, the league has big issues with that. That won't be happening this week. But the Cavaliers, if it was about rest and taking time off to be more fresh this time of the year, certainly the Cavaliers took that opportunity this year.
Yeah, it was LeBron's decision to say, I'm going to approach the final 2 games the way I would have approached it if we had already locked up the number 1 seed, and they hadn't because the number 1 is obviously Boston, but it was still within reach, and he punted on it. He said, no, I'm going to do what I do, a sort of training camp for himself, things that he does to get ready to the start of a second season that he's been doing for a decade. And that to him was more important than starting game 1 of a series against Boston in Boston.
Well, what's left for them to prove at this point? I mean, obviously it's Golden State trying to claw their way back in from sort of an embarrassing defeat in the end last year after having such an incredible regular season.
Yeah, I mean, if we get Warriors and Cavs 3, it's all up for grabs. Another chance for LeBron James to beat a team that has already taken him down in a final. He did not like the fact that Steph Curry's rise included him, included taking him down. And so last year's NBA Finals swung on the Draymond Green suspension. So, I mean, a lot of juice for seeing all the chalk come down, and biding time and having to work through the calendar, we're going to get our big reward here at the end.
Well, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, you give the Spurs no chance here now.
Not with Leonard hobbles. I mean, if they would have taken game one, and obviously Kawhi Leonard comes out of that game at 100%, then sure, we got a series, and San Antonio had stolen home court. Fact is, Golden State was able to win that game.
He is Tony Mia. You can follow him out on Twitter as well as at VegasInsider.com, MEJIA, and it's Tony Mia, NBA, out on Twitter. Hey, man, I appreciate the visit. I know you're watching a lot of basketball here this time of year. We're, from our perspective, with no Wizards in, it's now about these chirps and the draft, and I know you spent a lot of time working on the draft and throughout the course of the year. Any thoughts on Melo Trimble and Jackson coming back and dribbling some more down at the Comcast Center?
Yeah, I think probably both second rounders. But Melo Trimble, he's got to straighten out that jump shot. When you stay in school and scouts are able to see you in big games time after time, they pick your game apart immediately. And so it's almost, you see that the top 5 prospects in this draft are all one and done. Melo Trimble, had he come out, it would have been a first round pick. It's wild the way that the culture around the draft has become.
Well, and sometimes you go back to college and try to do quote unquote the right thing, and you sort of untangle some more weaknesses that maybe they didn't find in the first 12 weeks, like Diamond Stone last year.
Exactly. It happens to everybody every year. It's always somebody that either gets bit by just coming back, either by injury or a hole in his game that becomes magnified.
Or a bad team in some cases. Hey, Tony, great spending some time with you, man. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Much appreciated, Nestor. Thanks.
You got it. Tony Mejia, NBA, the way to follow him out on Twitter as well as at VegasInsider.com. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. On your mobile device, you download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by our friends at BuyAToyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. digitally each and every day. You sign up once, you get it for life. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. And last but never least, all the breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. The Orioles are running pitchers back and forth seemingly every day. As it happens, you'll get those moves, the roster moves. Luke will get those out to you. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube. We are WNST.net. AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.